Hello, good morning. Actually, it's a real pleasure to be here in the first time since a long time in the 3D event. I got some conflicting instructions because referring the mask. I'm fully vaccinated, boosted, and yesterday I tested, so I shouldn't represent a danger to the audience. Actually, I have to have a strong word with Rama. He put me right after Robin, and that's the worst spot you can ever be, because he lifted you to the rooftop of strategy, organizational behavior, and you know what. And he is a monster in presentation. I'm just a CIO of Standard Chartered, and I see how I can fare to get you into the machine room of a cloud transformation. Let's just talk about a couple of things. First of all, I want to have one slide, who we are, Standard Chartered Bank, then why we did go to the cloud, what we actually did, how we did it, and then I touch a little bit on risk and regulations. And then hopefully I can get this. Okay, here. So Standard Chartered is a bank originating or legal headquarter in London, but actually operational headquarter is here in Singapore with most of our group staff located here. We operate in 59 markets. In 46 of them, we take deposits, so we have a bank license. And actually, we have a bank license in 6 of the 8 most populous countries. Also interesting to know, most of the software we operate, we own ourselves. So we are pretty much a DIY shop. So we have a lot of software which we build, which is important for the rest of the presentation. And obviously, when we, Bill Winters, the rest of the management team and myself took over in 2015, we were a pretty traditional bank, I would say. And by then, we decided we have to change the bank into a different setup, move it into a digital transformation. So all what Robin said, we did in the back end, but I don't want to go into that one. But I just want to give you a little bit of what the technical requirements were. So there were a couple of things which we had to work on in the bank, and whatever kind of aspect we touched, whether it was our setup of SC Ventures, which was an incubator within the bank, whether it was our API strategy, whether it was the security aspect of the technology, whether it was a DevOps environment which we are going to build up, resilient infrastructure, all these aspects we touched on, there was always one theme, and this theme was cloud. By 2015, we only had 5 or 6 instances in the cloud, and the rest was on-prem data centers, distributed in a couple of global data centers and also in local where policies restricted us to go somewhere else. So as I said, so everything pointed to the cloud as the one most important aspect of the technical transformation. And this is actually something which we then later on, when we built the strategy for the bank, we put aside together with a couple of other technical catalysts we had to work on in order to support the business transformation of the bank. So just to highlight the 4 strategic priorities of the bank, it is on the one hand side, because we are a full service bank, we are wholesale and retail. So on the wholesale side, we strive to be the network bank, connecting international companies across our footprint with the relevant services in trade and cash management. The second and the third bullet priorities is for targeting the retail bank. So we are very focused on the affluent clients. And as well, because we are operating, as I said, in very populous countries, to have a suitable mass banking strategy. And the fourth one, very recent, is the advent of the sustainability, not only to be sustainable ourselves, but also be sustainable in our products, the services which we give to our customers. So these are the 4 strategic priorities, and actually then the technology team sat together and say, how can we best support these business priorities with technology? And we came up with 5 technical catalysts, and I go from right to left. Client experience is paramount, so you have to be always on, you have to have a nice looking UI, UX. Employee experience, absolutely clear. We have 85,000 employees whom we engage with, and in the pandemic had to be connected to our clients all the time. And then the three very important technical elements. The one is an open banking and service-oriented architecture, so loosely coupled components across our footprint. Go for global systems, so a system should do one thing, but should do it well, and should be able to offer that service on a global landscape. And then, last but not least, cloud first, which I'm going to drill down a little bit more. Just on the global systems, interesting fact. So we have a core banking system in the bank. 42 countries out of the 46 countries have the same core banking system. And out of these 42, 8 are already running in the cloud, just to put some proof in what we have been doing. So cloud, we said we have to go to the cloud. We have to get away from on-prem data centers, from physical presence, to host our future workload in the cloud. The target here is, it's public, in 5 years we want to have more than 50% of the total compute workload in the public cloud. So talking about the cloud, what is it? Everybody talks about the cloud, but actually we have to peel it down a little bit. And all of you in the room, you know, there are various versions of the cloud. And what we did in the beginning, we said, okay, which piece of the technology goes where? So, as you all know, the cloud spans from software as a service, so something which you would buy as an API over the internet. And then you have the infrastructure as a service, which is a basic compute. And then a little bit more advanced, you have the platform as a service. So what we did is, we went into all our 1,400 instances, which we have in the bank, and said, okay, which of the 3 buckets we want to go to? And very easy to comprehend is, for all the commoditized business processes, the service where we wouldn't differentiate from any other bank, for example, the likes of DBS or UOB, we would say, let's buy a software as a service, because that's something which anyway everybody is using. So I refer to accounting, travel management, certain kinds of back office settlement processes, all the kind of things where we are just doing the same thing as everybody else. So this one, we said, let's go for software as a service and buy these services. So no longer installing software on our premises, which we buy in a shrink-wrapped manner, but go back from that one or go straight into a software as a service. The middle layer is then the software where a SaaS is not available. Where SaaS is not available, we still have a licensed software. We said, okay, at least we have this license, this software, and host it on an infrastructure as a service. So that's, I would say, is 30% of the total workload. So where we just go rehosting from an on-prem version into a cloud version. And then last but not least, the software we build ourselves. And that, I would say, is obviously the biggest endeavor and the hardest work, but that's where you get the highest reward as a technical organization. So here, what we were striving for is all the workload of the software we built ourselves, we had to really re-platform or re-engineer the software in order to be compatible and runnable in the cloud. And in the cloud, I don't only mean just the basic storage and compute, but using all the application services, the platform services a cloud provider would offer, like a database service, an API service, or whatever is there. So this is the basic setup. And now the question is, what did we do? And I start with the area where we totally failed. In the beginning, when we started that journey, we thought, okay, let's go to the cloud and let's do a data center in the cloud. Just take our on-prem data centers and then just move it into build kind of a copy of the data center in the cloud. To be honest, this was not very good. Yeah. So now I'm confused. I get here the message I should put on my mask. Yeah. Do I? Yeah. Okay. I'm compliant. Thank you. Okay. I hope you can still understand me. Yeah. And normally my glasses get a little bit foggy, so I wouldn't see you, but I can hear you still. So what we then did is, okay, we tried to build the data center in the cloud. So we gave the task of cloud migration to the infrastructure guys. And actually that was a dead-end road. We experimented like half a year, 9 months, to build something there, to replicate what would be the normal infrastructure setup, and this didn't just work. So we said, what was going wrong? And then out of a sudden, the penny dropped, and we said, no, we have to do a whole technology transformation going to the cloud. Because cloud is not only about the compute infrastructure, cloud is all the kind of things which you see here. You have a lot of application aspects, and I come to this a little bit later, application aspects where you have to actively work with the developer to recreate the application in the right way. You have to actually do a whole lot of your security setup. Security in the cloud is a different animal than security on-prem. On-prem, you would typically have shared infrastructure and all these kind of artifacts. In the cloud, you have always dedicated, segregated areas, VPCs, and you have to handle them in a totally different way. And then your network is a different, and specifically in the way when you have on-prem and cloud together. So this conversion and migration needs to have the full attention of the whole team. And then last but not least, on the virtual workspace and how the end user tools are incorporated is also something which has to take into account when you move to the cloud. So in the second attempt to get this right, we said, okay, we built a cloud hive, and this team was comprised of application developers, network guys, security, infrastructure, and the account manager, or the supplier managers to work with the cloud providers in order to have a combined team which go there in the cloud. And that approach, which we started roughly in the beginning of 2020, that actually led to the success we are enjoying at the moment. So to have a holistic view on the cloud and really go into your development process and touch in all of the aspects of your build pipeline, your DevOps pipeline, to take advantage of the possibilities and of the cloud. So it was specifically on the build side, on the testing side, where we equipped ourselves with different tools in order to take advantage of the speed. The packaging and provisioning process had to be totally revamped, and deployment and run and monitoring as well. So what we went, and this was between, as I said, 2020 and reaching obviously up to today, we totally refurbished our development process into a cloud native development process where everything is considered code. So our developers, our infrastructure people, they no longer manage on a console our infrastructure themselves, but they write the tools and scripts in order to promote the code as fast as possible. This transformation obviously now is reflecting back on the on-prem side, because cloud-first strategy means that we develop our tools and our whole system, our modus operandi, tied or built for the cloud. We are now circling back and getting the advantages of the cloud engineering, also on the on-prem side, which is a nice side effect. But obviously, the main target is to promote as much and migrate as much of the workload into public cloud. Today, we have two hyperscalers which are currently working with us. We are working on a third one to have an even better regional coverage. And this brings me to the last point, which is risk management and regulation. Working in our part of the world is pretty tricky because specifically as a bank, there are a lot of regulators which oversee our daily doing. So we are supervised by the PRA and the FCA, which are the British regulators. But in each of the countries we operate, we obviously we are subject to the local regulations, like here in Singapore, the MES, the HKMA in Hong Kong, RBI, and it can continue. So whenever we do something, there are a lot of eyes, pairs of eyes, looking over our shoulders and see whether we do the right thing. So we had to work very intense with our risk partners and compliance partners in order to stay within regulations. So one thing which we taught them and we told them is by going to the cloud, there is actually an enormous uplift in our resilience and operational stability. Why is that? On the left-hand side, you see the old world. We had two global data centers with two availability zones each, and the software was either running in one or the other. Today, with our existing or our present hyperscaler partners, we normally deploy into one region. One region has already 3 availability zones, and for the very, very important and strategic workload, we are working on a cross-regional backup, which was 2 data centers before, is now in effect up to 6 data centers for resilience and operational stability reasons. So there's a big uplift in the stability and resiliency. The other point is on the security side, as I mentioned before, there was a lot of refactoring going on because now we have to make sure that we either tokenize or encrypt all the data which is sitting on there, which went along with the development process. What's actually fascinating in the whole journey is when we started the cloud migration, we got quite some questions and pushback from our global regulators. So in the beginning, there was quite some conservatism around in all the banking supervisory organizations concerning the cloud. Actually, the picture has changed dramatically. Today, we have, and I brought you a picture here, these are all the countries where we have an activity, and we reached out to all these countries and asked for the permission to run our important workload like the core banking system or payment systems in the cloud. Today it stands that we have in the overwhelming majority of the countries, we have the opportunity to run in the cloud today. This is a picture of one, the other is a little bit behind because we were sequencing the requirements. And you see there are only 2 dots which so far have said, no, you can't go to the cloud, this specific cloud, which is Turkey and China. But the other ones are either green, which means unconditionally, or they are yellow, which means you can go there, but you have to ask us before you move a specific workload there. So this picture now gives us the absolute opportunity to shift the workload according to the regulations which are now prevailing in many, many countries, which is a rule that data has to stay in the geographical region, if it's personal data or payment data, for example. So in the past, we wouldn't have been able, in an easy way, for example, to comply with the Indian payment regulation, which explicitly say that payment data cannot leave the border of India. But now with the advent of cloud and the availability of a region in India, we were able to shift the core banking system, the payment system, and the data lake where all this data is sitting into India within less than a year. So the cloud not only gave us the opportunity to lift our resiliency, it's a huge advantage in flexibility, and Nowadays, with the advent of more regions across the world, it gives us the opportunity to stay within the regulations wherever we go. Today, I would say that we are already seeing, after having about 60 instances actively in the cloud, we see the true advantage of the flexibility, scalability, and the global reach of the cloud. And we see that our digital transformation, which was a little bit slow in the beginning, is now really accelerating and exponentially growing. Thank you for your attention, and I'm really forward to look for the other presentations.